Hey, folks, it's Ted Cantu. You know where I'm at? Go over here. No, I'm over here. Nichols Arcade. Ah, yes, Nichols Arcade. I grew up here, you know. I'm back in my own town. This is Ann Arbor. You see that doorway way back there? Right? Is it this way? There we go. Right here. We used to run through here. Cops used to chase us through here when I was a hooligan. Uh, Over here, one of my old enemies has a storefront. How's things in the romance business? Probably not so good. Just a wild guess. Oh, and over here, this way. No, this way. This way. That way. Little Star Wars reference. I'm in the right place. Empire Strikes Back is probably one of my favorite films of all time. Anyway, you can see we're decorated for the holidays. This is the usual stuff they do. The Miracle Mind Shift. All right, day 66. We're doing another episode because I want to talk about I want to talk about some questionable things I read. Okay, so back to this one. Super Accelerated Living by Mr. Bentinho Massaro. You see, he's a very young guy. Very young guy. 19, 20. He's supposed to be this incredible enlightened being. He was a teenager. I don't know how he got enlightened so quickly. He must not have went to our public school system or something. I don't know. But he came up pretty incredible. They asked him something really interesting here. And the reason why I'm showing you this background is I was a hellion when I was young. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Uh, oh, my goodness. Okay, so he had this thing about what was it that brings you joy? And basically his answer was, oh, here we go. So who was your favorite superhero? He says it was Superman. His was Superman. And he says, obviously, since that's who he is, he identifies himself with Superman and is closer to his vibration than anything else that he could have believed. Who is your inspiration? Anybody who inspires you will really show you more of who you really truly are. And what kind of achievements are you inspired by? Hmm? In a good way? Who are your icons? And your answers will actually tell you who you really are. I hope that's not true because I don't want to do that. And I'll tell you why. Because I was a complete nightmare in my 20s. I was actually a closely aligned to Andy Warhol and Picasso, uh, the wild, rabid fauves, Van Gogh, Gauguin, and the like, and punk rock. I think we got chased through here by some cops after a Black Flag concert. Up the street was the Nectarine Ballroom, right through that doorway. And if you go like 2 blocks, the other way, you'll find it. What's left of it is now the Necto. It's a dance club for alternative people who I don't want to really label at this point in time. Uh, you're going to have amazing adventures, embody similar energies, and life is passion. Um, you're going to go out and have just basically just go out and just have a reckless life and see what happens and live happily ever after, which is a really horrible advice to give. What's that one thing? No, I really don't want to really repeat it too much, but I will say it this one time. Um, Going back into the occult uh, books, Aleister Crowley, which I don't really want to get into too deeply, but he had a phrase that says, "Do what thou wilt." I mean, do whatever you want in this life. Lou Reed from the Velvet Underground says it like this. He says, "It is your time. Do whatever you want with it. This is your time." Yeah, I can believe that up to an extent until you start hurting yourself and hurting other people and making a complete ruin of yourself, ruin your life. And you take those steps that you can't take back. Always talking about the four crowns, living with love, empathy, and service for other people are the only energies I want to work in. They're the only loops I want to create. At a time when you should be running away and hiding from your family on Christmas, going to the bar and just like blowing your brains out, um, I chose to serve at a high level and give to a point where it's uncomfortable. Give to a point where there's nothing left for the Kabbalistic principles and to live high end on the light under the guise of Kabbalah and Yehuda Berg, an author I admire, is how I chose to spend my holiday energy, my Christmas energy at the service of others, because then the light will chase you down and they say you can't outrun your blessings. I didn't do that for a greed factor. I did it because I had to. I was pressed like a piece of coal to just give, 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 and give and give and give till there's nothing left. That's why I did it. But I could have said no. So if you really choose to live on your own terms and to live selfishly and to live recklessly, you'll have adventure. You'll probably crash too. So I was thinking about this sort of thing, and I disagree with Bentino that you can live any way you want to with no consequences and just live for the adventure. Because I've done that, and it was a wild time, and it was called the 80's, and it was a crazy, crazy time, and I really I don't recommend it. I'm too old now to live like that. But I want to go back to a story from that time in the 80's. And I was actually, I want to say I was in the 90's. I was in, no, I'm sorry, it was 89, wasn't it? I was in New York City. And it was the first alternative music festival of its kind. And this is before Lollapalooza. This is before Riot Fest. This is before all of that stuff happened. And it was an alternative music festival in New York City. And back in those days, we used to have some of the groups would meet at certain clubs, like the Ritz. Some of the events would take place at CBGBS, right in the Bowery. Some events would probably be taking place, I want to say, at the Wetlands, right, which no longer exists. And there might have been some stuff in Brooklyn, from what I remember. But I remember it was all, it was a crazy, crazy time. And then there was this. I remember XTC was around when Oranges and Lemons came out, and that was, and they were in the city, Andy Partridge and all of them, and they were on David Letterman. We saw them do a live show, and I was staying up in the upper 80's during the live broadcast, knowing that XTC was actually in town, which really, it was exciting because they stopped touring by then. And you just felt this electricity in the air that anything could happen. That was a really cool thing about it. Keith Haring was still alive, and he had a pop shop, his art store, and Soho was vibrant and crazy and just electric. Everything was just happening all at once. It was an explosive time in the art world. I love that that whole time. And the Damned was playing at the Ritz, and I do believe Guns N' Roses was just coming out around then, and they're getting some big, you know, exposure and limelight. It was a wild time to be young and alive in the city. Anyway, it reminded me of a story about manifestation going the opposite direction in a negative way. And the band I'm going to tell you about is called Old Skull. And I didn't take a lot of notes on it, so I'm just going to read from my phone. I'll just tell you what it was. So Old Skull was an American punk rock novelty band that formed in Madison, Wisconsin in the late 80s. They were 10-year-old kids. His name was J.P. Tulin, and his 9-year-old brother, Jamie Tulin, were inspired by their dad. His name is Vern, and he was a long-time member of the punk scene in Madison, Wisconsin. And he was in a band called Missing Foundation. So we tutored these boys to be a punk band. Now, these guys were young. There were 4 kids. And I remember they played a music festival in New York, and they had an album called what was it? Oh, the album was called Get Out of School, and they wrote about songs about skateboarding, hot dogs, being homeless, and the AIDS virus. The album was considered unlistenable because it was all noise. I remember they had a song called like School Sucks or something. We had a copy of it over at WCBN in Ann Arbor. It was a radio station. It's a college-run radio station. My friend Bob used to help do a show there, and I used to actually help on the weekends. We'd spin records and get on and talk about our favorite bands and that sort of thing. And it was a crazy time. We used to go there and just do the show from like midnight to sometimes 3 in the morning or do an all-night shift. It was always on the weekends. Anyway, the band was pretty much like passed over. You know, they were no one took them seriously. There was write-ups about them in Spin magazine. I believe Rolling Stone might have covered them too. They might have been on TV, made an appearance on some of the talk shows at the time. Let me see. They were on, they were on A Current Affair, and they were in Newsweek, Life magazine, and People. All right. So they're a punk band. They're 10 years old. They were in a music festival, like I mentioned, and they broke up when they were 12. So they were just there for the ride, just to be a novelty. Now, this is where it gets weird. Okay, so in 1992, they reformed and they got some new people in there. They were older, obviously. They have a new album called CIA Drug Fest. And obviously they're messing around with drugs at this point. 1993, they disbanded after a short tour to Japan. 2005, they get back together again, and they're in their mid-20s, and they do a show at CBGB's. CBGB's. I used to go there a lot. They opened up for the Exploited. You know, Waddy with a big red mohawk. Waddy. The guy danced on my fingers. He almost broke my fingers with with blue Doc Martin boots. He spray painted them, his boots. And he danced on my fingers, and I was jammed up against the stage. Almost broke my hand. The Exploited. I saw them at the Nectarine right down the street. And um the adult life gets really, really weird now. So they're encouraged to be this negative band, this negative punk band. They're encouraged by their dad, who was a punk rocker. They're involved with CBGBs, which is CBGBs, man. Where do I start? It was like the Godfather of punk ran that place, right? The guy who did he ran this place. Uh, Will Crystal, Hilly Crystal, the Godfather of punk. Drug addicts, crazy people, the birthplace of punk. It was television, radio. What was it? The bands that used to play there. The Police actually played there. I got their first start there. Blondie, television. Ramones, Talking Heads, the Dead Boys with Stiff Vaders, friends of Sid Vicious and the Sex Pistols. I mean, heroin addicts, right? Yeah, Johnny Thunders. Wow, heroin junkies, man. Crazy people. So they're around. They got some guys there with leftover crack, a horrible band, punk band. Okay, so now we're doing this stuff. What happens living at these low level energies? Jamie, who was interviewed on the street, one of the original members, was living on the streets. And they get a 15-minute interview with Clay Pigeon. He was a DJ for WFMU. He recorded conversations with random street people in New York City. And in the 2010 broadcast, Jamie revealed that he was living on the streets of New York City, was battling drug addiction. Later, he committed suicide in 2011, just not even a year later. 7 months after the death of his brother. His brother died. His brother died. Huh. And his brother died from pancreatitis. He was hospitalized several times. These are kids, you know. And of course, he had nothing but problems with jail, drug rehab. Holy cow. This just goes on and on. Um, so the story goes into the kids are dead. They started this band. The dad, who was a producer, he was in a documentary talking about his sons. In 2001, he dies at age 46. Several reports indicate that he had resorted to panhandling in the years before his death. The boy's parents divorced early in the band's career. Several years after the divorce, the boy's mother died in a train accident. That's the end of the family. The whole family's wiped out by 2001. Man, I'm still alive doing my show. I've been around. I've seen stuff. I had art galleries. I had a career in advertising, and I'm doing new stuff and new projects and thinking ahead with the universe, co-creating, working, planning, new relationships. I want to stay on that side of the light, not the bottom. And I don't tell you this story just to bring you down, but the idea that you can do anything you want is terrible advice. And sometimes when we do things, when we don't work with the light, when we don't work with the universe, that follow any kind of universal law principles, we don't always just hurt ourselves. but we can accidentally hurt those around us. It may not hit us for a long time. I can go out and do heroin, I mean, figuratively, and every other drug source on the planet, and might survive. I might survive, for a long time. But those around me might, that love me, that I'm connected with, might suffer accidentally. They might be affected by my recklessness and carelessness. Everything that we send out to the universe comes back like a ripple. The book, there was a book about that, Nano, by the Bergs from the Kabbalah Center, was really advanced about the quantum aspects of energy, magnetic fields, and the messages that we send out. Now, I feel bad for that family, but I read things like that with new perspective, thinking, well, if now that I know how the universe kind of works a little bit, wouldn't you be more careful with your selection, your choices? The dad died when he was 46. That's crazy. And his wife died crazy in a violent accident. And his sons died with an alcohol related disease. And the other one just died too, which is amazing. They were homeless. So prosperity escaped them. That's a cautionary tale. It really is. Nobody really talks about it. And you can read about that on Wikipedia. But it gets me thinking about things. In another show, we talked about Sam Kinison. He had he spoke some horrible things over himself, and he didn't live long. Pay attention to that stuff. The thing that probably really aggravates me the most, the longer I live, is how steady the lines are drawn between one group to another. When we first did the magazine for Hot Metro Finds, I had an idea to connect the best of the best of people that I've met on the spiritual side, introduce them to the music people and to the punk rock people. Seriously, I know it sounds insane now. And that somehow we'd find like culturally rich pockets of people cross connecting and uniting. And wow, what a wonderful world we live in. Give your brother a smile. Wonderful. What a wonderful world we live in. That's the Circle Jerks. But seriously, I was really thinking that there could be a like sort of like a Village Voice meets the New York Times meets the phenomenal news people, all coming together for an enriching cultural experience. And you know what? Every group hated each other. They hated each other. The Christian people hated the punk people. The punk people hated the conservative people, and the art people hated everybody. And it was just a big disaster. It was horrible. I don't see myself as punk or leftist or right or super conservative. I'm just glad to be alive. I'm also glad to know that the universe is a real thing. Our energy is a real thing. Manifestation is a real thing. Universal laws actually work when applied. The mind, body, and spirit is not just some random set of molecules. Our lives are not just some sort of destiny's football being kicked from one place to another. There's actually purpose and reason. I used to have a skateboard. I used to ride through this place. It was a Black Flag skateboard. It had a picture of a woman in her 40s on the back, and she looked all drained and haggard and just fed up in life. and it had the Black Flag logo, and you'll never guess what it said on the skateboard. I'm not making this up. This really happened. It said, "A reason for living." A reason for living. Like that music is our reason for living. And you know, I'm really being generous by calling him music, because Greg Ginn is one of the worst guitarists I've ever heard in my life. He really is. I actually saw him. Horrible musician. And yeah. It's a far cry calling it music, I'll tell you that. The guitar solos alone will split your eardrums. You got to really search for a melody on some of the songs. Anyway, a reason for living. The universe, it's real. Quantum physics, it's real. And you're surrounded by a field of probabilities that can change in an instant if you change your focus and change your magnetic directive. Yeah, it's real. And when I hear these kind of stories about what I just read, I gotta say, it makes you look at it in a whole new light and appreciate life in a whole new way. Yeah. Before I say too much more about it, do your own homework. Just don't listen to everything I say and take it as fact. I want you to internalize it, but I also want you to do your own homework. Make your own moves. Create your own path. Get your own results and your own stories, because in the end, that's really what's most important. All right. That's enough for the show. The negative side. I just wanted to show it to you. I don't want you to live there, but I want you to at least see it. Anyway, if you have any questions, I'm sure you do, you can always find me at tedcantu.com. You could also find me at my phone. Give me a shout, 248-277-6141. You could also email me directly at tedcantu@gmail.com. Remember, if I can overcome my problems in life, you can too. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you online.